Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 21 of My Hero Academia, season 6. So we're in the home stretch, y'all. We're in the home stretch this season, and I can't believe it. So last episode, I finally get to say Lady Nagant. It has been such a long wait to say that name. I can now not go through the OP and be like, oh, it's her. I can say her name. I like Lady Nagant a lot. Her character design, I love her attitude. I am really excited for this episode because it's her versus Deku. It's a good time. A lady that can make bullets out of her hair and has like a sniper rifle coming out of her arm. Horikoshi, why not? I love it, right? I absolutely love it. And I've really enjoyed the comments that have been on YouTube and on Patreon and in the Discord about this series. It's been a lot of fun to analyze, and I'm actually sad that it's coming to a close. I'm sad that we only have basically a month of My Hero Academia left. It's like, because I don't know how long it will take for them to, I'm sure they will do a season 7. I'm sure they will. They've got the content. I'm not sure how long they will wait though. We'll talk about it later in the manga spoilers section, the spoiler corner, but we'll talk about it then. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how the rest of the season goes, because we're technically in the final act, right? We have Deku versus Lady Nagant, and I won't spoil it anything for you anime only people, but I'm going to be very curious to see what we end up doing, because I'll be honest, the last 2 seasons of My Hero Academia have ended. My Hero Academia always has a weird time ending its seasons. I don't know if you all have noticed that. Like, season 1 ends fine, but there's only like 10 episodes. Season 2 ends at a really good point. I thought season 2's ending was nice way to end it right before we go on. Season 3's ending was around with Bakugo and Ichigo and Bakugo and Deku, and talking about figuring out Deku's quirks. So that part was fine. Season 4 ends at a weird point, and I know a lot of manga readers were kind of upset with how it ended because they cut at a very odd point. They needed like an extra episode before they did it, and instead they moved it to season 5 and started out with that, and they rearranged things. It was weird. And then season 5 ends on a fine note, but it's still kind of at a weird place. So My Hero Academia, I kind of blame it a little bit on Horikoshi, but I'm not blaming, because Horikoshi is writing a manga. He's doing things his way. But I do think that Horikoshi's kind of writing his manga being like, this is how the arc's gonna go, y'all animating, figure it out, you know? So My Hero Academia has a tendency to have a weird ending point for each season. So I'm gonna be curious. I think we'll talk about the spoiler corner. I think there's a way they can end it without it being weird, but we need to wait and see how that goes down. So But I'm really excited to see what ends up happening in this episode. Bones gives us some doom and gloom. Someone in the Discord was like, man, the atmosphere is really dark and disturbing. And I'm like, yes. I was afraid they were going to make the skies blue, you know? No, the atmosphere is fitting the series quite nicely, and I like it. So kudos to you, Bones, for sticking to your guns. But yeah, so I'm excited to see what they do, how they handle these next few episodes, but I'm excited for this one, so we'll see, right? We shall see. Before I start, though, real quick, I want to give a special shout out on Patreon. We have different tiers. So if you want to join the Discord and talk about My Hero Academia, it's $1 per month. If you want to get the next week's episode a week earlier than everybody else, it's $5 for the month. And that goes for all the series that I cover on this channel and all the specials, things like that. And then those that are especially kind and gracious and want to offer me extra support, they're in our philanthropy tier, and they're amazing. So I want to give a special shout out this week to Dana, to Edgar, to Truck, to Kenny, to Tyrone, to Larry Manning, and to Anime Annie. You special individuals are insanely kind, and I'm very, very grateful for your support and all of your kindness in helping me to do the thing that I love to do, which is talk about these anime and manga and Dongwon Danmai with you all. So thanks. But with that being said, we're going to get started, and I hope you all enjoy the episode. But we're going to start episode 21 of My Hero Academia season 6, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my gosh, this was a great episode. Oh, this is a really good episode. This is a very good episode, and I feel Bones did a very, very good job of adapting it, because without spoiling anything, we can talk about the episode now and the contents of it. These chapters in the manga are when they came out originally, I remember a lot of people were questioning some of the pacing of the events that happened in it, because the chapters, if you go back and read them themselves, they're kind of like the end of this episode actually cuts into the start of another chapter. And so the chapters and the pacing themselves, I remember when we talked about it in the discussion forums at the time, they were a little weird. And so I feel like some people were kind of like, about it. But I think they adapted it really well here. And they actually ended, I was wondering how they were going to end this chapter when they started getting to like Deku reaching out his hand for Lady Nagant. I'm like, are they going to end with her exploding, or are they going to go beyond it? And they went a little bit beyond, which I think was a better choice overall. I think just having her, because in the chapter, now that we've seen the episode, in the chapter of the manga, the one chapter like ends with her exploding, and it's like, what? And so then it cuts into the next chapter. I think that it was adapted well here. And it works thematically, and ending with Deku being like, all for one, what the hell, I think was a better choice overall, right? So, as Huckleberry wants me to play with him. But yeah, so let's talk about this episode. I love Lady Nagant's backstory, because it's a nice compliment to Hawks' backstory, and kind of showing a little bit of the difference between them and how the safety commission used both of them, which the safety commission, I've never been a real fan of in the series ever since we first learned about them being, there's government organizations, and then there's like the secret government organizations. And usually the secret government organizations are the ones you got to watch out for, because they're doing stuff behind the scenes and getting away with more stuff. And usually the stuff that they do is underground and more secretive and more problematic. So it's always a problem. But yeah, so I've never been a fan of them. And so once we found out Lady Nagant's history, I'm like, oh yeah, no, they're kind of the worst. And they're kind of the big problem with Hero Society. And Lady Nagant talks about that in this episode. But before we even get to that, All Might being daddy of all daddies, going to help Deku, his foster son, and just being an intimidating presence even without... I feel like he's come a long way, because back around the earlier seasons of the series, All Might's big thing was he's like, oh, I've lost all my strength. I'm just this decrepit, like, skinny man that has no power. And I think back to him talking to Aizawa about him questioning, there's kind of hints that All Might was thinking of suicide back then, because he didn't think he had any purpose left. And Aizawa was like, glad you didn't do that. But Aizawa being like, hey, it's okay being retired from being a hero. It's okay being able to be a teacher and a mentor now and influencing in other ways. You can do that, and it's okay. So yeah, it's fascinating, right? It is fascinating, because I feel like All Might's come such a long way from where he was. And now watching him go up against these guys that were like, what is so fantastic about this scene? Again, we have the Thunder Spears, and if you've watched Attack on Titan, you know exactly what that's referring to. This guy's quirk is that. But like the one guy that's, been used by All for One is like questioning, like, should we even be fighting All Might? Like, that's him. And the other guy with the mask is like, well, look, he's skinny and decrepit. But All Might's like, hell no, I still got murderous intent because you're trying to hurt my boy. Nobody does that. And I just love how they animated that and translated it from the manga, because it's a very short scene in the manga, but they made it like such a good epic scene of All Might being like, I may be skinny and not have the physical strength I had before, but I am still a force to be reckoned with, damn it. And it's like, yes, please. I'm like, I freaking love it. And he's like, him talking about Midorima carrying more of a burden than he had this entire time. Because that's the crazy thing, right? Is that we think that All Might has been this hero among heroes and had to do all these things. But All Might establishes that he's like, no, he's like, I've been keeping the peace, true, but I've not had the mental burden that Deku has had. He's like, and when you think back to it, All Might's had friends, but we don't really get a lot about All Might's past. Like, who were his friends? Like, you have Aizawa and Present Mike and Midnight. They were all like friends throughout school. And you get the idea that Kamui Woods and Mount Lady have known each other, and there's other heroes that have formed cliques and stuff. Endeavor's always kind of been by himself. I feel like Endeavor doesn't have a lot of friends his own age, and he's fine with that. Endeavor's kind of an oddly introverted hero, oddly enough, and kind of like Shoto, but Shoto has friends. But then All Might, we don't really see, other than Gran Torino, him really being besties with anybody. Like him and Best Jeanist, they're not best friends, right? Him and Endeavor are probably the closest, but they're like frenemies. It's like a Bakugo Deku kind of situation. But All Might's not really had the burden of having his friends put in danger like Deku has. And Deku not only has that, but he's also had to deal with All For One going after him, learning about all the quirks with One For All and everything. And he's had more of a mental burden than All Might has had being a hero. And he recognizes that. And he also recognizes the fact that Deku doesn't want to let All Might down. And that's kind of part of it too. All Might, with Nana dying, he carried on her burden, but he never was faced with her face to face all the time like Deku is with him, right? And so he's like, if you're going to try to hurt my kid, you're going to have to go through me. And I love that his aura like scares the other heroes back, like the other villains back, like, oh shit, we don't want to mess with All Might. I'm like, good. No, we don't. Although him saying the only reason Deku is going to get in trouble is if he's gone, I'm like, please don't jinx things, All Might. Don't say such things. Just stop right. You should have stopped that last sentence. It was a badass one-liner, but no. So the lovely Lady Nagant. Man, the animation in this episode was amazing. I loved the direction that it took of him weaving through the buildings. It felt very much like Ufotable, the animation studio that does Demon Slayer. I was thinking back of season 1 Demon Slayer, where it's weaving through this house and the camera and stuff like pans through different things and your eye kind of gets lost. It's a really cool scene, right? I love it. But man, I'm glad they went for the bullet shots and them actually showing them hitting him, because in the manga it's brutal. It's like Deku's getting shot everywhere. It's not hitting any vital points, which again is a nice foreshadowing with Lady Nagant's character, that Deku says later, you know, if you really wanted to hurt me, you could have shot to kill. You could have shot to incapacitate me, right? If you really wanted to. But there's just enough hero left in you that you couldn't do it, right? So you were missing all the vital points and the joints that would have made it to where I couldn't move. Which is, again, that's her own fault for getting caught, but Deku's recognizing, like, you still have good in you and humanity in you. You're not a monster, right? Like you may think that you are. And Deku's on a mission. He's like, if I get information from you, I can find out information for All For One, and then Shigaraki. I like that Shigaraki is the end goal for Midorima. It's not necessarily All For One. Like Deku knows All For One is scum, but Shigaraki is the one he wants to save. And so he's like, if I can just get information that leads me to Shigaraki so I can save him, that's all I want. And that's all he's thinking about using her for, is just to get that info. I remember Deku, it's kind of cool. And someone in the comments was talking about this with the last episode. The idea that Deku separating himself from All For One. All For One uses quirks like various attacks and things like that. And he's only caring about destruction by using these multiple quirks. In Deku's case, he cares about multiple quirks. He uses multiple quirks because he wants to save people. So they're not attacks necessarily, they're tools and resources. So it kind of says that relationship between All For One and One For All and how they use the quirks that they've been granted. It's a cool contrast and I really, really like it. But yeah, so I like the idea of Deku being this strategist and it's like a chessboard, and he's trying to like know, how do I use this quirk in conjunction with this quirk, and how can I use this strategy? If we talk about comparison between him and All For One, Deku does use One For All and all those quirks very similarly to All For One. All For One is like a chess master trying to say, okay, what quirk can I combine with this to use in this way? And Deku kind of does the same thing. Now, if you're a Dad For One theorist, I remember when this chapter came out, there was a lot of Dad For One theorists that was like, oh my god, Deku is like strategizing just like All For One. It's genetic. I'm like, I guess if you theorize that and you believe that All For One is related to, either is Deku's real father or is related to him, sure, that works out great. But you could also look at it as it's a nice comparison and contrast between All For One's user and One For All, right? It's a nice comparison and contrast. Like you have these two characters whose use of quirks are similar and whose strategies are similar, but then their actual usage and implementation and mentality about their powers and the quirks are vastly different. So I like that. I like that the Horikoshi creates this parallel, but also this separation. It's really cool narrative-wise. And just watching Deku being able to use what he's good at, right? Because Deku's smart, right? He's a sweet cinnamon bun. And I think a lot of times when people see characters in anime that are sweet and cinnamon buns, they think that they're dumb. And yeah, there's himbos. There are sweet cinnamon buns that are little golden retrievers, and they are not very intelligent. But I think Deku is a cool exception because he reminds me a lot of Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. He's very kind-hearted, he's very sweet, he's very friendly, but he's smart and he can strategize. And one of Deku's biggest strengths has always been his brain, his ability to put together a plan and formulate it and carry it out. And his problem in the past has just been he's not been strong enough to carry out the plans that he formulates. But now that he's starting to activate all these quirks and getting help from the other vestiges, he's starting to be able to do that, right? So it's kind of neat. It's good to see Deku grow and be able to be a better hero, especially against a very threatening character, because Lady Nagant is a threatening character. She very much is capable. I think if she had been a full-fledged villain, she would have taken him out, right? And then Deku realizing that she has the power of airwalk, that she got that quirk from All for One, is such a good moment where he's like, why didn't I even think of that, right? Thinking of the fact that she would have taken a quirk from him. It's great. And then I said saxophones at first. No, it's violins, but I love the violin music coming in. The violin is always used for All for One, which is like playing everyone like a fiddle. It's very, very symbolic, and I like it. And Deku believes that she's trying to capture him alive to maybe take him to that place she was talking about at the end. 2 months later, they're supposed to meet. I'm sorry, but the smoke screen quirk, it just comes across like a skunk spray or like a fart blast. And that's so vulgar and stupid, but I in the manga, it's not so noticeable because the smoke is black, but I don't know, there's something about it being a purple haze. It just looks like a fart or something, and Deku's like down there crouched. It threw me off in this episode. I was like, meh. And then the ninth is like, not so much, Deku. I do love the way the animation makes the vestiges come in and out to talk to him, and they're all color-coded because it's like a big rainbow. I really like that. I think the animation works very well in terms of that adaptation element. It's great. The third user, I like that we're getting him in this episode. And the ninth user's like, hey, I like the ninth user's voice actor. He's like, whoa, watch it, Deku. He's like, you'll be hit the moment you leave the smoke. And Deku's like, I just need to think. I like that Deku's like, sometimes part of the strategy is giving yourself time to think up a new strategy. And he's like, I just need to think at this moment. So, let me breathe. I love it. It's great. And I like that both the ninth and the third, what is it? Because All Might was the 8th, Nana was the 7th, N was the 6th, the 6th user. The 6th user and the 3rd user are like, wait, you shouldn't do this so much. And I like the 3rd user coming in kind of like All Might, where it's just a shadow, you don't really see him. And then as Deku's like revving up his legs, he starts to get clearer and clearer. The 3rd user, I had forgot what his quirk was, if I'm being honest. I said this in the spoiler corner, but I had forgotten what the 3rd user's quirk was. I was like, I know that Deku uses it during this fight, but I can't remember exactly what it is. I know it's something physical. It's a physical quirk that you can use. But it's basically springs on your legs. It's basically, if you're going to get down to the basics of it, it's like giving your legs springs. But what's kind of cool is it's sort of something Deku's been practicing all along. It's this idea of building up energy in like your legs and then releasing it and using it like as, it's kind of like when you're playing Sonic the Hedgehog and there's like the little arrows that are on the ground and they spring you forward. That's exactly what this quirk is. It's a controlled version of that you can use in any direction. And I like that idea of building up energy and releasing it is sort of what Deku's always been doing. But it's cool that we actually get like a practicality, like Fusion, a name for it. I also remember in the manga that there was a lot of translation issues of how to say it. So Fusion, I'm assuming that's correct. But yeah, I like it. I like the idea that Deku can apply something he's kind of been using from the start of the series and giving it a boost and a more practical application. But man, I will tell y'all, the scene of him coming out of the building and grabbing her, this was all one chapter. And I remember when it came out, everybody was like, wait, what's the application? How's he using it? How does this work? And I think the animation team did a very, very good job of making it make sense and using it in this moment. And him coming out of the building and grabbing her was just, it was very well done. Because a lot of people reading the manga at the time were like, how does this work? How did he get her? And seeing it animated, seeing it all play out, it's like, oh no, this all makes sense. I like this a lot. It works. It's really good. And him seeing that he used the smoke screen, and then he knew the danger sense of knowing when she was coming. But in this case, he only used 3 things. He used smoke screen, he used black whip to send out all the distractions, and then he used the third users to jettison up and get her. It was like, so good. So well animated. It was great. And him saying a smoke screen that won't spread in the rain. That is a cool application of it, because normally like a smoke screen grenade or something would disintegrate in the rain, but this is a special quirk. So that makes it kind of cool. And him like releasing all the different parts of his cape, his backpack, his mask, things that she would shoot, on site. And then him being like, a sniper shouldn't get too close. I was like, what a good one-liner, Deku. Deku's getting the one-liners. He's growing up on us, y'all. He's growing up on us. It's so sweet. Yeah. And then she starts talking about the safety commission. I do think it is a very convenient plot point. A very convenient narrative device that Horikoshi uses by putting the microphones in her bullets. Is that a plot convenience and a narrative decision? Absolutely. But I was like, you know what, Horikoshi, that works. Good on you. Because it's like, how often do bullets have microphones built in? Never. But I think it's very creative, and Horikoshi, because Horikoshi's task in this moment is to say, okay, how can I tell Deku this narration, this exposition? How can I get this exposition so that Deku can hear it, but that also we, the audience, can hear it too? Because they could have made it just an internal monologue, because that's essentially what it is. This is just really a soliloquy by Lady Nagant talking about her past. And if you just did that for the audience, Horikoshi could have just made it a soliloquy as she's like firing off bullets at him. Would have worked. But the problem is, Deku needs to hear all of this exposition in order for him to realize what Lady Nagant's been struggling with. And so that later on, when she blows up and he tells Hawks about all this, he can kind of relay the information that, no, she's still a hero. She's just been jaded by the system. So Horikoshi's task is, how do I take this internal exposition and make it to where Deku can hear it and it not be... Because, he can't just have her shout out in the rain. So the safety commission, as she's like shooting him, he can't just have that happen. That's too weird. So instead he puts microphones in the bullets, and as he's falling, the bullets are landing on all sides of him like a ladder, and he's just hearing it as he falls. It's the most bonkers thing, but it works. And I'm like, okay, Horikoshi, I will give you a pass because that's creative, and it gets the job done. So I don't know if anybody else has noticed how weird that mechanic is in this story, but Horikoshi is pretty good at, if he needs something done in the series, he will find a way to make it work. And it's usually not hokey. It's usually, it fits the superhero aesthetic enough that it works. And I really, really enjoy it. So yeah. So as he falls, he hears about her past. He's like, you only see the justice that was made. I like that she calls him out on his education. What's interesting is that both Lady Nagant and Hawks, neither of them went to UA. They were both secretly trained by the Safety Commission. So they have a very one-sided view, but they met other heroes who were trained by the system, so they base their views on that, right? Which is fascinating. But she's like, you only see the justice from the outside. You've not seen the inner workings of how it really is. You just see the finished product and you just buy that, right? Which again goes back to Deku from season 1. He was like, oh, a big villain's appeared and here's the heroes. Like, he sees things how Hero Society sees it. Whereas Lady Nagant's like, no, you need to know the inner workings, like how the sausage is made. Because it's not all glamour. It's not all fun and rainbows. There's a lot of bad stuff that happens behind the scenes. When she gets away from Deku and starts airwalking and he tells the third, he's like, damn it, and I caught her too. All I could think about was Sweeney Todd, where he's like, I had him. I want Deku to like break into song, right? And it's really gloomy outside, so it kind of reminds me of London. And she says, I was tired, you know. And that's when we hear the bullets come through. She's like, I killed so many in order to maintain this sham society. I love that we start getting that. There's a group plotting terrorism against heroes, and we were told to just take them out without them being judged by the law and let them disappear. Let them disappear along with their sins. So she's saying, like, we didn't even bring them to trial. They were plotting. They hadn't technically done anything yet. We were just told to take them out. And that was it. They didn't get any justice by the law. Because, yeah, somebody was talking in the comments as well that it seems like most of the villains all go when they're captured to Tartarus or to a subsequent prison, and they're in prison. They're not killed, they're just imprisoned. But she's suggesting, like, yeah, no, that's what the public thinks, but we actually take out a great deal of them. My thing with the Hero Commission in this moment is you all had her take out these plotters that hadn't technically done anything yet, but you all didn't kill Overhaul or All for One or Kurogiri or Gigantomachia. I guess they can't kill Gigantomachia. Maybe that's it. Maybe some of those villains they can't kill, so they don't know what to do with them, so they're like, we'll just shuck them into prison. But I'm like, All for One was on life support. Take him out! I was like, honestly, I was like, Hero Commission, you're so dumb. I'm like, you would have her kill these heroes, these villains, have her kill these villains that hadn't technically done anything yet. But you've got an old man on a ventilator and you're not going to take him out? What? You're asking for trouble. I was like, when he first got, like, waylaid by All Might, why didn't you do it then? What's stopping you? I was like, damn it. Which, you know, I guess Horikoshi's saying that sometimes the inner workings of these deep political parties don't always make sense. And if that doesn't translate to real life, I guess I don't know what does. But yeah, it's like, why is All for One still allowed to roam around after All Might? And so she talks about this, you know, guaranteed, you know, peace for the civilians and this double life that she led. She worked as an underground mercenary, killing people left and right for the Safety Commission. But then on the outside, in public, she has to portray herself as this hero that just brings the villains to justice and all that, when she's living this fragile double life and she's aware of that fragility. And so that just makes it even worse. Like, the ones that don't, and the fact is that she cares. That's the thing, because I'm sure that Hawks and the others were aware of it too, but they didn't let it affect how they mentally were able to deal with everyday life. And in her case, it's like she did care and it did affect her. And it's like, right? So, and she talks about how, you know, just getting her hands blood-stained and she's just covered in blood, a public face and a secret face. Like, she secretly was dying inside because she couldn't take and handle the burden of having to live this double life, but she put on a good face for it. And I love that in the manga, it's really good. I will say the animation of the little kids, like Sonic speeding towards her, is a little janky. I was like, you have this amazing animated episode, and then the kids coming towards her with the little Sonic spins. It's a little hokey. I was like, Bones, you could have thrown another $1,000 into that. But I do like the visual, and especially in the manga, of her reaching to the kids to shake their hands, and then all she can see is the blood-stained hand. Like, she's like, do I have any right to shake these kids' hand and be an inspiration or a role model to them when I'm so messed up? Like, that is so powerful. And Hawks doesn't really, it's a good foil for Hawks' character, because the thing about it is, Lady Nagant didn't have an endeavor. She didn't have a source of inspiration for her to model herself after. Like Hawks, he was doing all these things, but I feel like Hawks was used much more in the capacity to save people behind the scenes and to kind of do reconnaissance. He wasn't a hired gun necessarily. I feel like Hawks did more like reconnaissance and intel work and gathering that and saving people behind the scenes. I'm sure he did kill people. Like, well, I mean, we have Twice as an example, but I don't think he did it to the capacity that Lady Nagant did, because she literally, her quirk makes her an assassin. And Hawks has much more versatility, I feel like. But the thing with Hawks was he always had a model hero that was driving him. Like, Endeavor was his driving force. Like, okay, I want to be a hero like Endeavor and be this shining light. Lady Nagant doesn't seem to have that. She doesn't seem to have that in this situation. She's just doing what she's told. And she was told by the safety commission, like, oh, here's a way for you to be a hero and to be the best you can be. And she had the stars in her eyes. And then as she gets older, she just realizes how messed up it really is. And we don't get in this episode, we don't get the person, the hero she supposedly turned her, like, betrayed. I can't remember, if I'm being honest. This isn't a manga spoiler because I can't remember if we find out who that person was. I think maybe we do, but I'm going to just hold off on that until we find out next episode if we get any more on that. I can't remember if we do or don't. Like I said, it's been over a year since I've read the manga. And I've done that intentionally, so I'm not sure. I love, though, that shot of her in the apartment all alone with just the solo chair by the window, and there's the blue lighting of the city. I love her hair being down, and she's had her hair down and long so she can make bullets out of it, and she says it's all a sham. I love that. I love that duality there, right? And so then we have the former president of the safety commission telling her why she needs to do her job. She's like, because Lady Nagant's like, shouldn't we, the problem we're having right now in the storyline is something Lady Nagant brings up. She's like, if we just show society the good parts of heroism, it's kind of brainwashing them and thinking that there is no bad side to being a hero. She's like, isn't that going to one day implode? Isn't the bubble going to burst, like it is now? And the safety commission's guy's like, oh, we don't have to worry about that. Like, we're just going to throw it under the rug, right? He's like, and I like that we don't see outside of his glasses. He's like, what's important is that we have to maintain hope. And that's it. Like, the public just needs to know that heroes are a good thing. And if it's maintained, that's all that matters. And she's like, well, what about afterwards? What do we do then? And he's like, are you suggesting that you want to retire? And at that point, he goes to pull out the gun. And I'm like, dude, her body's a gun. What are you doing? You brought a pistol to a rifle fight. What are you doing? And that's when she's like, oh, no, you're not threatening me, and goes down the deep end. I thought in the manga that she had had to kill a hero, and I don't remember if that's confirmed or if I'm just making that up. So we'll see in future episodes if that gets brought up or not. I could have swore that it was, but I don't remember. But yeah, basically she was like, nope, and goes on a spree afterwards after killing the current president. And we see, like, behind him in one of the images, we see the current president that was just killed by Redestro taking his place, right? And then afterwards we know that Hawks gets recruited as her replacement, right? And it seems like maybe they learned from their mistakes with Lady Nagant, because I don't think Hawks ended up doing as many mercenary missions as she did, right? Which his quirk wouldn't allow for that. His quirk's not one for assassinating. And so Deku's learning over and over again. He's learning more and more about the situation of Hero Society. And what I like in this episode is that sometimes in shonen, when a character learns something very dark about the way that things are in society, they kind of go through an era of despair. I think of Ichigo a lot in Bleach. When Ichigo learned some revolutionary fact about himself or the world around him, he would have like a chapter or two where he'd be like doom and gloom, and someone would have to lift him up by his bootstraps and be like, come on, Ichigo, get with it. And what I'm glad is that Deku doesn't do that here. In this moment, he learns this horrific truth, and he goes, okay, I get that this society is messed up and it's not all black and white. It's a big series of gray things. But because of that, that only gives me more reason why I should be helping characters like Shigaraki and helping to redeem them. He's like, because they need to not get any worse, but is killing them really going to solve the problem? And I know a lot of people in the comments have been like, he's going to need to kill Shigaraki. And I'm kind of torn on it myself, if I'm being honest. Like, thematically, realistically, if they're like, he needs to kill Shigaraki before he destroys the world, realistically, that makes sense. Thematically, in this superhero narratives, a big point of them is to redeem the villains. So, or make them see the errors of their ways and turn a new leaf. And if that doesn't happen, then yes, they have to kill them. So, but like in Batman comics and superhero comics, Lex Luthor and the Joker don't really die. They're just put in prison, or they're made to see the errors of their ways, right? So, I mean, I know there's storylines where they have, but for the most part, it's like they get brought to justice by the hero, but they're not murdered by them. So, I don't know. I'm still torn on, I'm still torn on what will happen to Shigaraki, if I'm being honest, and where that's going to go. But this flashback where Shigaraki is talking about the inside of society being rotten, I feel like Deku at that moment is like, well, I'm going to change that, and we need to address that. And I like that Deku has that spirit, right? And she, like, blames his education for making him so optimistic. And Deku's like, yeah, no, this is just how I am. And so then her aiming at Overhaul, I forgot about that. If I'm being honest, I forgot that she aimed at Overhaul. I knew she brought him there to use him, and I was like, what did she end up doing with him? And then I was like, oh yeah, she's like gonna kill him. And the sad thing about it all is like, I'm glad Deku says that to Overhaul. When we get to it in the episode, we'll talk about it. I'm glad he makes Overhaul, like, come back to Eri. But Overhaul at this point in the story is quite pathetic. He's quite pathetic. And I almost feel bad for him because he is on a one-track mind. He doesn't... The thing that makes me feel bad for Overhaul in this episode is that he's not out for revenge against Deku. He doesn't even care about Deku. He doesn't care about the circumstances that have led him to this point. All he wants to do is apologize to his old man. That's all he wants to do. Like, at this point, and the thing of it is, he wants to go see him, and on the one hand, you would be like, oh, well, he wants to heal his grandpa. He can't. He has no hands. He can't do anything. So, literally, him seeing his grandpa will not change the situation that his grandpa is in. It won't. He's still going to be in a coma, but he just wants to see him to apologize to him. And it's that little moment of humanity that I'm like, I kind of feel bad for him. But then Deku talks about Eri and brings her up, and we'll get to that because that's rather important. But yeah, I like that we have Lady Nagant has like an Android 18 moment where she goes and finds her clothes, right? And Chisaki, he's just sitting there like, I like that Deku doesn't call him Overhaul. He just calls him Chisaki. He just wants to see his old man. That's all he wants. And Deku saved... The moment they animated him saving Deku, or Deku saving Overhaul, that was really well done. It's very much like the manga where he's just like, it's like all pushed back as he like gets there and goes faster than a speeding bullet. And the idea of the faux 100%. Again, like we talked about, it's something that Deku's been working on this entire series because he's been basically faking it for so much of seasons 1 and 2 having the 100% and found ways to go around it. And here he's using the third user's quirk to get him to that stage where it's not 100%, but it has the effects of it for a brief period of time. I'm here for it. I like it. I think it works well to save Overhaul. And then I love the red lighting on Lady Nagant's face as it happens where she's like, what? And then Deku being like, I'll talk to you later, Overhaul. I'm not forgot about you, but I gotta handle this first. And Overhaul's just sitting there with his... I love the sleeves flapping in the wind. Like, this is sleeves for a shirt. And he's like... like a damn hot dog. Right? And then Deku... God, I love it. I love just the water droplets in that scene frozen as Deku goes to save. And I love when she tries to use the airwalk and she stumbles. Like she mentally like breaks in that moment and she falls. It's a great symbolic representation. But Deku grabbing her hand and being like, look, you changed the trajectory of that bullet. You could have killed me a long time ago. You could have killed Overhaul a long time ago. You're not a terrible person. This shades of gray. You're not terrible. But he's like, I want to help you. And I do love the idea that we see her from a little girl. And she has like... I like as a little girl, she has like her arm bandaged up where her quirk is. Like it's to keep her from showing that there's a gun there while she's in school. That's a cool little addition Horikoshi added there. And then seeing her as a hero. And then seeing her with the bloody arm. And then seeing her covered in blood. Seeing her feeling like Hero Society is a sham. And then seeing when she went to prison, they shaved her hair. So she couldn't just reach out and make the bullets anymore. Mm-hmm. And then her hair had grown out to the point it was now. But I love that he's like, you're not a bad person. He's like, you're just being used. You still have the heart of a hero. And of course, Horikoshi loves to use that idea of grabbing hands as that connection we have with others, right? We saw it with the first user and the second user. We've seen it used time and time again in this series. Horikoshi loves that visual symbolism of two people holding hands and it connecting them together. Tried and true symbolism, and I'm here for it. Now, In the actual manga, she ends with her face cracking up and blowing up in that moment because All for One's not going to let us have a nice, happy ending, right? I was wondering how they would do it, but All for One literally put a fail-safe in that quirk to be like, if she betrayed him, he would blow her up. Now, how he knows that? It's All for One. Who knows? Is he sitting in his cave meditating with his oxygen machine? He's like, there will be no breach of contract. Now, in the manga, it's pretty brutal. It's pretty grisly in the manga. They had to censor it in this episode because Bones is like, we're not animating that. But yeah, it gets censored quite a bit. And I forgot that Hawks is the one that saves her. I forgot about that. But him coming in. I do love how they animated his tiny little chicken wings. It's the cutest thing. It's so much better than the manga. Like his little animated chicken wings. I want a gif of him just flapping with that. It's the cutest thing. And he's like, I can't really fly, Deku. And Endeavor, I like Endeavor's like, sorry, the rain holds me up. I got a firepower, but the rain hits it. And Endeavor goes to get Overhaul, and Deku uses Black Whip to help them land more safely. And I do like that Hawks recognizes Deku being like, this kid doing all he can to save her and I feel like he's giving Hawks all the information in this moment in case something happens, being like, the more people know about Lady Nagant's story and what's going on, the better off we're going to be in case if there's another assault or another explosion, maybe more than one of us will know, right? What's going on. This was all because you were enticed by All for One. I am glad that she doesn't open her eyes too much in that moment and acknowledge them. And Hawks with the rain, I like the rain coming from him looks like tears. I like that. Where he's like, it's too early to throw it all away. I like the idea that Hawks, who was her replacement, gives her the encouragement, being like, look, we were both used as tools, but that doesn't mean it ends here. That doesn't mean we can't be redeemed. It doesn't mean we can't atone. It doesn't mean we can't move forward as heroes. He's like, don't give up just because you think that you've thrown it all away. And I like that she says, how can you two have sparkles in your eyes? I love it. And we see her like stargazing as she's at her desk, like she's taking off the bandage from her arm from school. Like just seeing Lady Nagant be a person and having these aspirations. She's so much like Deku, right? And then moving forward to getting to the point where she's at. It's really sad. But then yeah, she says, I was supposed to bring a target to this place 2 months from now, right? She's like, several of us were told the same thing. So that's going to be a thing, right? That we've got to check up in 2 months and figure out what that part is. We'll talk about that later in the spoiler corner. But then, yeah, I love the idea that she tells Hawks being like, Mr. Replacement, I couldn't take it anymore. And she's like, how can you still be okay? And he basically, I love the soft looks they give Hawks in this, where he's talking about Endeavor, and the soft look they give him, and then his voice actor, which his voice actor's, it's, Junichi, so he's great, but he's just like, no, it's fine. Or is he Junichi or not? I know he's Gojo's voice actor, but he's like, his voice acting was really soft there. It was very well done. I feel like it is Junichi. And so then, yeah, then Overhaul gets brought in, and Overhaul is on a one-track mind. He is literally overhauling this idea of seeing his grandpa. And he's like, this isn't what we agreed on. And I like that he's like, I'm not talking to you, you're sick. I like he says you're covered in germs. I'm talking to the woman. I'm talking to Lady Nagant. I realized that there was like a Lady Nagant Overhaul ship for a hot second. It was like a crack ship because of them together up until this chapter. I don't think Overhaul needs anybody at this point. But God, I don't think it helps me in sympathizing with Overhaul because he's voiced by Suda, and I love Suda, so I'm instantly like, oh, he's not that bad. But he's talking about he's all I have left. I want to apologize to him. And that's a very humanizing moment for Overhaul. Someone that has been such a terrible, awful villain. Like, that's such a moment of humanizing him. And being like, look, he is a person underneath all of that, right? But Deku, and Deku with the dead eyes, the dead fish eyes looking at him. That's just like Deku looking at him with those dead eyes being like, what about Eri? Because Deku's like, yeah, that's great. You have this humanity in you for your dad or your grandpa. Good for you. But Eri, like all she suffered through, I love that Deku's like, he's like Shisaki, and he's like, oh, shut up, I was talking to Lady Nagant. He's like, do you remember what you did to Eri? And honestly, at this point in the manga, a lot of people were getting a little worried because he was like, Eri, oh yeah, her. She can heal Pops. Like in that moment, all he thinks about, again, doesn't think about her, doesn't think about the kid, thinks about the old man. And one thing that was good was that I do like that this entire time Overhaul wasn't thinking of using her. He literally just wanted to go to apologize to his grandpa. He wasn't even thinking about her at all. So that is, on a plus side, good that he wasn't planning on using her. But on the back end of that, it's like, how could you forget her? You made her life a living hell, sir. You do need to apologize to her. And he's like, Eri. And he's like, oh yeah. And he's like, if I have Eri, she could rewind the old man. And then Deku's like, yeah, there's someone you want to apologize, right? If you can turn those feelings towards Eri, if you can feel just as sorry and want to apologize to her just as much as your old man, then I'll let you go see him. I like Deku's like, you're not going to leave her out of this. Like, you used her and abused her. You need to come to terms with that, and then maybe I'll help you see the old man. Like, it's a very teacher moment for Deku, right? It's a very teacher moment. I'll do what Lady Nagant promised if you do that. And Overhaul's just like, okay. Like, I like the Overhaul's like, the gears are turning in his head, and he's like, I don't want to do this, but yeah, if that gets me from point A to point B, sure. Now, would that apology be genuine? But Overhaul's at the point where he can't do anything. My whole thing is, I'm like, I would be terrified to bring Eri in front of him because she's made such strides. Would seeing him, like, make her regress? I don't know, because it'd be like, why would you want to see someone like that again? And then All Might! I love All Might shows up in the best Genus Mobile, bullet holes and everything, like, through it, and he's like, young man, are you okay? Like, he's just like, oh my god! Like, All Might's like, just shows up like a parent to a parent teacher conference. He's just like, oh my god. And he's like, All Might. And they're like, we've captured Lady Nagant and Kai Chisaki. I forget his name, first name was Kai. But yeah, it's just like, All Might is distressed. Lady Nagant is dying. Chisaki is just completely emotionally distraught. And I like the Hawks is like, Deku, you need to go to a hospital too. You've been shot like 5 times. And Deku's not even hearing Hawks. He just thinks about grabbing her hand and it blowing up. And I like that visual of his hand grabbing, becoming a fist. And him saying like, this is all for one. And his eyes getting that like creepy blue tone. And then we go straight to the end credits. Like you do. So yeah, this is a really good episode. I thought the adaptation of it was really, really good. I liked it an awful lot. I'm very excited to see what all we're going to get for the rest of the season, though, because we have basically all we know at this point is that we have a target we're supposed to go to in 2 months, and maybe that's where we go to from here. I do have some things in the spoiler corner that I want to talk about, but I was very pleased with this episode and what they included in it. I thought the pacing was good for it, especially for the chapters, because the chapters in the manga went by very fast. So I'm glad that they were able to make the pacing work for this episode. It was really good. So yeah, we have 22, 23, 24. And is that it? Do we have 3 episodes left? We have 3 episodes left. Wild, y'all. Wild. 3 weeks left of My Hero Academia. And that's it. So, But I'm really excited, y'all. I hope y'all are too. I've got a couple spoilers I want to talk about in the spoiler corner, but if you're not sticking around for that, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 22 of My Hero Academia. Bye. All right, I still got spoilers. Spoiler corner. I was like, well, that's the end. Nope. I don't have a lot of spoilers, but the moment they brought up the 2 months thing, all I can think about is the next episode coming up, if we have the whole thing with the mansion blowing up, is that part of the manga. I'm going to be curious how they adapt that, because that part of the manga is probably in this entire arc the most rushed and confusing thing for me as a reader. I remember when that chapter came out that's going to be with presumably the next episode, where they just show up at this mansion like All For One said, and All For One's just sitting there with a TV being like, gotcha, and blows it up, right? And gets a bunch of heroes injured. And from there, that actually leads Deku to spiraling into dark Deku evil mode, evil emo mode, right? Not evil, but emo mode. So I remember reading it and it felt like such a weird transition, was that they go to the mansion like promised and it's just All For One playing games with them, and that just makes Deku feel even more mad and resentful, and it leads him to kind of like spiraling and being like, I've got to get to All For One. He's hurting people, he's not stopping, and he kind of gets in this one track mind, and it leads to the bento box scene, which I'm really sad about, and I'm not ready to see All Might, especially All Might in this episode. All Might in this episode was like running around being like, don't hurt my son, and next episode, Deku's gonna hurt his heart, and I'm not ready for it. But I feel like the pacing of this episode was good enough that next episode will have Deku spiral into emo mode, into his dark vigilante self, and then with the bento box, with all of that, and then that'll leave episodes 23 and 24 for the UA students to come in and help heal him. So honestly, like I said at the beginning of this reaction and discussion, I feel like My Hero Academia has always had a weird time ending a season, but I think this season they can actually end at a very solid point. They can end with Deku, like in the ED, going back to UA with his classmates, and that being okay. I feel like that's something they can do to end this season on a good note. I don't know. I feel like that's going to be the case, right? So we'll see how that all plans out. The thing about All Might at the beginning where he's like, the only way you're going to stop Deku is if you kill me, and I'm like... Again, I've not read this week's chapter, but it's just like, All Might, please, we don't want you to die. But it just seems like it's getting more and more inevitable. And I'm like, ugh. I do think if they end this season with Deku going back into UA with the other students, that will give us a lot of content to build up in the next season, where you'll have the whole deal with the traitors. You'll have the whole deal with All For One and Shigaraki attacking everybody, with Stars and Stripe coming in, with all of that. I feel like it's all leading up to something that'll be very fun to watch. And I'm really excited about it. But yeah, I'll bring up probably, I was wondering if I should do it in this episode or not, but the panel's not there yet. I feel like in the next episode, I'm going to bring up the panels from the manga, because there's a tie-in to Berserk, and I have not read Berserk or watched it. I don't know anything about it except for one aspect that I'll bring up probably in the next episode. So I don't want any spoilers, please. But I'll bring it up. It was around the time that the mangaka for Berserk passed, and I feel like Horikoshi paid a little bit of homage to the series through it. So we'll see. We'll talk about it then. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, y'all. So yeah. I'm excited to see what happens next. I hope you all are too, but I should be a good last 3 episodes to round out the season. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I will see you next week with episode 22 of My Hero Academia.